In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to make a sign like this for your family. Before we start, I just want to remind you that even though some of you are new to this, remember some key commands are your friends, like Control-Shift-A to bring up the Align dialog box, Control-Shift-F to bring up the Stroke and Fill. Remember, Stroke is like the outline, Fill is the inside color, Control-Shift-L to bring up the Layer dialog. They're all things your friend. Also Control-Z to undo anything. So if you're ever wondering how to do something, just try it out, hit a button, see what happens. If it's not the right thing, Control-Z or this little backwards arrow undoes it for you. So there's nothing to be scared of to play around in here. So let's get rid of these for now, though. So we're going to try to design as signs. This is a sign. It's about, I think this one's 10 inches tall, 10, 11 inches tall when I made it. That has a little kind of fancy border on the outside, has an image here in the middle, has a family name on top, says the word family, and then has the year, in this case, the year that the family, the parents of the family were married. That's kind of what the established date means. And these can be made just cut right onto wood, etched into wood, or in this case, I painted it black first and etched out. People seem to really like this version. A couple pieces are slightly a little bit more advanced to make, but once you get a hang of them, these things like this are really easy to make. You can make a lot of them really quickly, and they end up looking very, very nice when they're done, and people seem to like them a lot. So to get started, I'm going to actually make a few layers. So if you look at our design, we really have the kind of cut layer, which is basically just the bottom of it, the kind of shape of our thing, and maybe a little hole on top here. This one was meant to be kind of hung on a nail on the wall. We have our, I'm going to call it just a logo, but the image that's on it, in this case it's a pineapple, could be other things. We have some text. And then we have this kind of border that goes around the outside. So I'm just going to put those on their own layer just in case I want to lock them or I want to move things around or do stuff and I don't want them to get kind of confused. So I always start my designs that way by making some layers. Or at least if I know what I'm trying to make, I can make some layers to help me kind of populate stuff. The next step is getting the art we're going to need to do this. So in this case, we have a couple art choices. We have a border that we picked. We have an image that's going to go in the middle of it. And then we have to pick some fonts. So again, I pre-did this. This is usually stuff that takes the longest to ever do, is like picking these things out. I happen to have some art already that I created for this, so that I'm going to use that. But you can, again, go online. There's places like Design Bundles. There's Google. Remember, if you're making stuff for yourself in class and you find some images you like online on Google, it's usually fine to take them and trace them or use them to make stuff if you're making it for yourself. If you're going to try to sell anything, you don't want to do that. You want to either pay for your art and use art that you can sell, or just create it yourself. A lot of times, even art you think is complicated, you can end up creating yourself. So here, we have a couple choices here. I have this border. This is the same border that was there that I'm going to use. I also have a heart version and a pineapple version. Again, these I think I might have seen online and redrew them or modified them or something like that. So you can find a lot. Just search for what type of image you want in silhouette and maybe change the shirts to black and white, and you can find things very, very easily and trace it. If you want to go over more about tracing stuff, you can, I'll link the video that we made for you for tracing down below in the description. You can take a look at that. But again, picking your art, that's the first thing. Who is this for? What family is it for? Is it for your parents? What do they like? What type of image would make sense? Are they a military family? You might want to put some military things on here. In my case, everyone in my family seems to like pineapples, which is why I put a pineapple on here. But you don't, whatever makes sense for the person that you're making it for. That can go on there. Again, pick a border. I chose this. I like the way that it looked. You can choose any type of border that you want. Again, if you're from an Irish family, you might want to put a Celtic themed border. If you're from, I don't know, you want to put a heart border or vines or whatever. There's tons of these things you can find online in a lot of places. Then the hardest thing for me usually is to pick a font. So I pre-pick them up here. So for the name, I'm going to use this font. For the family part, again, these aren't sized correctly yet. We'll do that in a second. I'm going to use this font. If you want to know what it actually is, this is called Copperplate. This is called Pristina, and this is called Cambria. This is for the established part and the kind of date part on it. So once we have those things picked, so basically we picked our artwork, and the fonts we're going to use, again, you don't have to pick fonts now. You can always pick them later. I just pick them now to get them out of the way. So now we can start creating this. So our next step is how big is this going to be? Now, if we're using our machine cuts sheets that are 1 foot by 2 feet in size. So that's going to kind of limit how big this can be. I tend to make these a little bit less than 12 inches and a little bit less than 8 inches because that means I can make 3 of them on one sheet. Again, you can technically make these whatever size you want. You can make these as squares or as rectangles instead of as ovals. You can make them as circles. There's a lot of things you can do here. I'm going to just make an oval one just to show you how to make it. But again, your design can be whatever you want. So I'm just going to start by making an oval, or by technically making a circle. Click the circle button here, draw the shape. Now it's going to default to whatever the last color was that I used, so that's fine. I'm going to just go and make it have no color for now. I'm going to keep this thick outline. Now we know that we have to make the outline thinner when we go to cut this out eventually. But for now, I'm just going to keep it this way so I can see it better. And once it's drawn, I'm going to resize it. So I'm going to make the height, let's say 11.3 inches. Make the width 7.7 inches. And then drag it down here. And that's just a nice size for these. Now, if you look at this, it's a little bit, the proportions are a little bit different than the one I made before, I believe. It's a little bit taller, so I might want to make it a little bit shorter if I want it to look just like that. And again, this is the point where you can kind of play around a little bit. It doesn't have to be in an exact size. You can kind of change this, drag these things until it gets a shape that you kind of like. Maybe you don't have to save material like I did. You can make it a little bit bigger. Whatever size works for you is fine. So say we're going to go with something like that. Now I'm going to put this on the right layer. I'm going to right click, move to the cut layer. And I kind of have that. I'm happy with that, so I'll leave that there. Next thing I want to do is I want to throw my outline on it. So this is a little bit of a tricky part because now we're going to have to kind of, this outline, if you see, is not the same proportions as our drawing. So we're going to have to play with this a little bit and kind of resize it. And I'm just going to do this by hand until I like the way it looks. So I'm going to start by making it the same size as my oval because this is kind of oval-like. So I'm going to make it, let's make this a nice even number though. Let's do 8.25, 8 1/4, and 11 1/2. I'm going to make this exactly the same size. Now I know that's too big, but that's okay. And also I'm going to throw this on a layer now. So move to layer, move it to the border layer. So let's reorder that a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my key commands, Control-Shift-A, and I'm going to align these two things directly on top of each other. Center align, up and down align. All right, so now at least I know that it's centered correctly. Now I want to make my border a little bit smaller because I don't want to go all the way to the edge. If you notice here, there's a little bit of space. I want to have that space. So let's move this whole thing over for now so we can see both at once. There we go. But now that I have it aligned, I can click on the border part. Now I could grab this thing and I can resize it this way, but I'm going to screw up the scale. Remember, Control-Z always fixes things. If I hold down Control and do it, it keeps the proportions the same, but it kind of goes into the corner and it's not centered anymore and I can't tell what it's going to look like. But if I hold down Control and Shift at the same time, so the Control button, the Shift button, I'm holding them down and I grab the corner, it's going to keep the center and it's going to make the whole thing bigger or smaller, but keep it centered on top of the other thing. And now I can do this and get it to where I think it looks good. So I kind of like the way it looks right there. That spacing seems good to me. Now I'll show you that one more time. Again, let's go back a little bit. Not that far. So let's say we came in here and this was this size, which it was something different. First thing we did was we took it, made it the same size, so 11.5 tall, 8.25 wide. And what this is doing, it's giving it the same proportions as the other one. Then we're going to center them. I shift-clicked at both, Control-Shift-A to bring up the align dialog, center up and down. And now I held down Control and Shift, or I clicked on the border, not the cut piece, the border piece. Control and Shift at the same time, grabbed one of the corners, made it smaller until it looked the way I want it to look. And I don't know, that looks good to me. So on the border part's done. I'm actually going to lock the border over here using this little lock button on the layer so I don't click it by mistake. All right, so far so good. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the name part, the family name. So I'm going to bring this over. Now here you have a choice. On these, you can make the first letter bigger if you want. Sometimes it's easier to make the first letter the same size to not capitalize it or capitalize them all. It just ends up looking a little bit cleaner when you're going to curve it and do this stuff. So this is usually the toughest part to do, is making this curve, because I want this to curve around here. So what I'm going to do is we're first going to click on this outline piece again, and I'm going to Control D, duplicate it. Just hit Control D. Now I'm going to make it smaller. And you might get an idea, I'm going to use this to, that's what's going to tell me what's going to kind of make the curve of my name. Now this oval might be a little bit too sharp, so I'm not sure what this is going to look like. It might look a little bit weird. And now what we can do is we can just click on this. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to cut this in half. So I'm going to draw a square down here. Doesn't need to be a curved edge square. And I'm going to kind of click on both, shift click on both of them. Now, because I don't want the whole circle. If I wanted my text to go all the way around, I'd keep the whole kind of oval shape, but I just want it to go around the top. So I have the oval that's going to control where my text is. I then am going to, I want to get rid of the bottom part of it. So I drew a rectangle down here about in the middle. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. Actually, let me turn snap off. It's sticking to stuff. Again, because I want to cut off part of this. Now I'm going to click on those, and I'm going to do path division. And if you notice, that cut my thing in half, and now I actually have two shapes, so I can get rid of the bottom one. Now this usually works sometimes, but we're going to do one more thing to make my life a little bit easier. I'm going to click on this half that's left. I'm going to click on this the second arrow over here where I can see the kind of corners. And I'm going to select those two corners there, and I'm going to break them apart. So it says this button here, it says break path at selected nodes. I'm going to click that, and I should be able to now. Nope, didn't work. Try that again. Or we can delete segment. Let's try this one. Yeah, that's what I want to do. So let's go back, do it one more time. So we have our thing that we cut in half. I'm going to select it. Use this second arrow over here that brings up. So these little dots, remember, these control the shape. So I selected that. I'm going to hold down Shift and select these two corners. And you notice they kind of disappear a little bit. And then this button here, it says delete segment between two non-endpoint nodes. Click that, and it deletes that bottom line, because I don't want my text to go on that bottom line at all. I want it to just kind of flow around over here. So now what I can do is I'm going to go to my text, select it. I'm going to also double click on it and make sure it's centered. And now this is really, once I have this kind of curve here, this is a really easy part. I can click on my text, hold down Shift, click on my curve, go to text, and just say put it on the path. And it puts on there. Now, unfortunately, it's upside down, so there are a couple things I can do. So this button here, it kind of flips it. So it kind of depends on how it's going to start it, whether it puts it right side up or upside down. So this kind of flips it so it's written on the bottom. So you can use these little different things, and it kind of moves it around. Now, you might have noticed when it does that, it kind of messes things up. So I'm going to go back a little bit first, and I'll show you why it messes it up. Let's go back to there. Actually, I'm going to go back before I put it on. So there's one thing I forgot to mention. So once you cut your shape here, if you notice, when you click on something, you can change its size. You click on it again, and you can rotate. This is the rotate one where you can grab the corner and rotate it. But this little X is the center of rotation. So when we first drew our oval, the two ovals had the same center. Once I cut this oval in half, it now has a different center. So what we want to do is we want to use our snap tool here. And I'm just going to drag this center. And I gotta turn some of these things on. There, I want this one here. I want to snap to the center of things rotation. So if I drag, so again, what I'm doing is I'm clicking on the half oval, clicking it a second time. So I'm on the kind of, this is the part where I can rotate it. And this little tiny X is the center of rotation. That's what it's going to spin around. And I want to move this. Come on. Should snap. There it goes. Which one is which though? That's weird. I think it's this one. So I want to snap it to the center of rotation of the big oval. Although I'm not sure if that was the center. I think that's the center. So now when I spin this one, it kind of spins around the center of the big oval as opposed to the center of itself. So that's just going to keep it when I do the little rotation things. It should stay in the same spot a little bit better now. So now I'm going to click on the curve, click on the name, text, put on path, flip it around, and it's kind of getting there. Now, again, like I said, I made this oval a little bit sharp. It's a little bit thin, so it's hard to fit the text inside there. So what we might need to do now is go in here, make it a little bit smaller. So again, now you can play with the font and the text and kind of make it whatever size you want to kind of fit there better. You can also kind of move it around, bend the oval that's inside here a little bit. If you want to make it wider, hold down shift, and when you make it wider, and it makes it, when you hold down shift, it does it like a mirror image version of making it wider. So you can kind of move this stuff around and get it to the way you want. And then when you're happy, you can also rotate it a little bit. When you like the way it looks, the important thing is what we want to do now is we're going to have to actually, we can do one of two things. It's still attached to this line, so it's going to, when you move it around and do stuff, it kind of acts weird. That's usually okay, but we should be able to leave it here for now. So I'm going to leave it, but I am going to take this line and I'm going to make it white. Actually, I don't want to do that. I want to get rid of it. I want to make it clear. So it's still there. And if I kind of drag this across, see it's actually selected both of them. So the line is still there. It's just that it's clear because I don't want it to be etched out. But I do want it to be there because it's kind of helping me controlling this curve. If I wanted to change it later on, I want to have that line there. So again, I'll show you what I did one more time. So the line was there. It was red. Now the problem is if I delete it, it kind of blows up my whole entire font because right now they're attached to keep the shape it needs it to be there. I could flatten the font. I could do path object to path. And now it's no longer a font. I don't need this red thing anymore. It's gone. So that's probably, once you know you're definitely done, that's the easiest thing to do. If you might want to change it, you don't want to do that because you won't be, once you do that, you can't modify it anymore. So if you want to kind of keep it here, you could keep the red thing there till the end. Or what I do is just click on the red thing, shift, and the color that changes. Remember, that changes the color of an outline. Well, I can make the outline clear. That's what the little X is, and just make it a clear outline. All right, so we got the name up there. Now I want to throw the family part, so I'm going to find that. And again, really small. This one, I'm not going to curve it, so I can just drag it, and I can just make it bigger. Again, I'm just going to freehand. So these all should be aligned. This one I want to put in the middle, so I'll click on that, click on the font, Control-Shift-A, center it. And now I can, again, hold down Shift and make it bigger. And then if I can squeeze it and squish it, or I can make it whatever size I think looks good. Okay, I might want to turn off snap here just so I can move it around. And again, this is just your kind of freehand to get until you get it to the way you look. That looks nice. Make it a little bit smaller. And then when you're done, again, click on the outline or the cut line, click on that family thing, and make sure you center it so it looks good. Now that is there. We got a couple things left, and we're going to be done. We got our image. So I did a pineapple here. I'm going to do a heart this time. Let's throw a heart into here. And say let's throw it up here. Again, I'm just freehanding this, making it look the way I think looks good. That looks fine for now. Again, click the cut line, shift click the heart, make sure it's centered. If you wanted it centered up and down, you could, but you notice if I center it up and down, it goes too high. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Center it sideways. And now I want the established thing. Now this shape is a little bit too wide to do it the same way I did it here. So I'm just going to do it on the bottom. So I'll bring this over. Make this a little bigger. And I'm going to do this in 2 rows. So I have established. And I'm going to Control D, duplicate it because I want the same font. Just move it below it. And let's do 2005. Zoom in a little bit so I can clean this up and see it better. So again, I'm just freehanding this again. I just want it so it looks nice. Let's make the established a little bit smaller because I really want the date to stand out more. I'm gonna move the heart up a little bit so I have more room down here to make the ear even a little bigger. So I like the way that looks. Now again, I'm gonna just make sure it's centered. Click on the cut line, click on this. The established, click on the 2005. Again, I have mine set to first selected over here. So it never moves the cut line. And it centers it. I like the way it looks. And we're actually almost done. We have one tiny little thing left. Depending on how you're going to hang this, if you're going to like use one of those weird Velcro things to put on the wall, you're done right now. If you want to hang it like on a nail or something, you might want to put a little hole in it. So there's a little hole here for that. If I zoom in, you can see there's a little hole in this one. So if you want to do that, you could just put a little hole up near the top somewhere where they would hang it. If you want to use like a hanger that you put on the back, you don't need to do anything to it. So there's one more little thing I'm going to do just to finish it up. I'm going to move it over here. Oops. Didn't want to do that. That was weird. Oh, that's right. I forgot I locked that layer. I unlock the border layer if I want to move it. Yeah, your name does that sometimes when you move it because it gets freaked out because it's attached. So it is good sometimes to, what is this? That's the way I thought something weird looking at it. To at this point, just go here, go path, object to path, and then now this is no longer, this is a shape, so we don't have to worry about that weird line. I'm actually gonna even go in here and try to find that weird line. I think it is, I should have did this before. Right now I can't find the line that my text was on. I think it's, let's go to this. That I think is the line. Let's just go through and check. Yeah, so I don't need that because I did the object to path thing. Let's get rid of that. So now to create this, I just want to move it to the side over here. I am going to make my outline, Control Shift F. Remember 0.001, that's how our machine works. To make a cut, so there's my cutout line. And I'm pretty much done. What I'm going to do what I should do now, which I forgot to do before, is actually put the things in the right layer. So I'm going to move this to the logo layer. Move these to the text layer. And now I am done. Where I can go, if I want to make this, I'll go back, turn off my art stuff. That's just it by itself. And I could send this to the machine and it would etch out all of this stuff, cut the outside, and my design is done. Like I said, it's not too difficult. I went through this a little bit slow, showing you things. To make this, once you're used to it, probably takes you maybe 10 minutes to design this. Again, the little curvy part's probably the hardest thing, getting the curves the right way and finding the art online or whatever you're going to find the art to use it. But once you have that, these are pretty quick and easy to make. And if you want to make them for different people, all you have to do is come back in here, change the family name up here, change the established date, maybe change the image here, and you have a brand new one that you can easily make and give it to a lot of people as gifts.